This is In Character. I'm your host, Gerard Robinson, Vice President for Education at the Advanced Studies in Culture Foundation. Today, I am going to have a conversation with Cara, who was a part of a large group conversation I had earlier this year, where we talked about COVID-19 and its impact on teaching and learning. Well, now that we're actually recording, she's back in school and she's going to talk to us about the theme, but also more about herself. So let me go ahead and say, Cara, welcome to In Character.
Thank you very much for having me. I really look forward to continuing this conversation.
When we talked for the first time, we talked about teaching and learning and how COVID-19 impacted it. You're now actually in the midst of being back in school. So just bring us all up to speed on what's going on with your work.
Sure. Well, since we've spoken, I have been trying to do some planning. I've been trying to do some learning and really trying to support our administration, who has one of the hardest jobs, I think, out there at the moment as we start school. So I just recently got back to work this week in terms of the time that we are coming back together to prepare for students. And I will meet my students virtually for the first time next week. So our plan is changing daily, as I think everyone's plan has to in this uncertain time. And, it's really become apparent that the key word is going to be flexibility. And I think that's challenging. I know it is for me too. I like to have a plan. I like to have a schedule. I like to know exactly what's going to happen so that I can be prepared. And it's very challenging during this time to just constantly get these updates that you're like, wait, we just put this plan in place and now it's changing again. And so although there are a lot of challenges, I am really looking forward to seeing some students on screens, perhaps in classrooms, because some of them will return to school at first. And I miss my students. So I even had a chance to contact some students just to remind them, that they need to bring a textbook back to school. And it was just so nice to see them write back and say, hi, oh, yes, I have it. I'll bring it with me. And just to ask them, how's your summer been? I miss that connection a whole lot. And so I'm really looking forward to it.
So you were actually with some students and then COVID-19 hit, schools closed. So this would be the first time in several months you had a chance to see them, correct?
Yes. So I had asynchronous learning for the spring, although I still did see many of my students. They would check in with me, via virtual meetings. But most of it was just assignments that they would turn in. And I felt a great loss with that. It's not what teaching is about. I can give assignments anytime, but the interactions and the relationships that you form with your students is really important. And so that certainly is a concern of mine going into this, because you're meeting individuals virtually, and there are different levels of comfort with this type of platform that will make it more challenging, I think, to form those relationships as easily as it would be in person in a classroom. So I'm trying my best to learn and to experiment with a lot of different ways that can be possible. And as I said, just trying to be flexible and understand that it doesn't have to just be about the subject that I teach right now. We really have to be there for each other and support each other and really get a gauge on how our students are feeling each day, so that we can support them in the best way possible. Because learning is not possible if they're not feeling it. That's my opinion, and there's research to back that up. So I think it's going to be super important for us to sometimes remember that we can have our teacher hat on, but we really have to have our heart out all the time during this process.
For the viewing and listening audience who have not had an opportunity to know more about Cara, who's Cara? Where do you teach? What subject or subjects? All those good things.
Sure. Well, I live just outside of Boston, Massachusetts. I teach biology and zoology elective at North Quincy High School, so in Quincy, Massachusetts. I have officially started my 15th year of teaching, and prior to that, I worked as a marine biologist off the coast of Massachusetts as well. So one of my, big things is I love bringing real world science into my classroom. I love for my students to be able to experience science and also hear from career scientists what they're doing, and see different aspects of science. A lot of times we see, a white jacket for a doctor, and we see somebody at a microscope, but there's a lot of ways that you can support science. And so I really try to explore all of those different things with my students.
So with your background, you could have done a number of things in the area of science you decided to teach. What attracted you to teach, and marine biology in particular?
Well, I've always been an ocean lover. I love animals. That is really, ever since I was small. I mean, my father and I used to watch Jacques Cousteau and his adventures. And I just, it always stuck with me. And science particularly was something that I was really interested in. And so my two goals in life, one was to be a marine biologist and the other was to be a forensic pathologist. Just these really off the wall things that most people, somebody wants to be a doctor or an engineer, and I wanted to be these unique things. And I started going to school for medicine, and my heart was just not in it. And I knew that I wanted to be on the ocean and I wanted to do that. And was very, very lucky to be able to have a really wonderful experience with my career there. And also got a chance to do some informal education on board whale watch boats, do some outreach education with local schools and Girl Scout groups and, Cub Scouts, and just really kind of enjoyed that part, and received some compliments of like, oh, you really explain that well. And you really, you do all of this well. And I just thought, oh, okay, that's nice. And then the opportunity to look into teaching came around, and I decided to take it. So I was fortunate also that our state has the opportunity for a career change into teaching if you already have a certain degree. And so I was able to do that and then move forward with my master's degree and my continued education. So the woman who hired me, my former department head, she took a big chance, I think, with someone who didn't have any experience in a classroom in a formal setting. But I think she saw something that maybe I didn't know existed yet. And I soon found out that I really enjoy it.
Another colleague of yours who I interviewed, who was on another group conversation, also made a career switch. He went through an alternative path. And I think it's great for people to know this, because we often think, oh, I go to college, I go straight into the classroom. That's where many of our teachers have gone, but a number have taken different routes. So it's good to hear it, particularly in science, because we have a number of people with scientific backgrounds who think, you know what, Cara has actually planted a seed in my mind, because I wanted to, but I just didn't think I could do so.
Yeah, I think it's a major plus. I mean, not that doing the traditional method of going to school, I mean, if that is what you want to do, that's incredible, but I think that having some of that authentic career experience is also a benefit for your students. So, maybe your thing is you really love the pedagogy, you love all that, and that's what drove you there. And for me, I think it was more, I want to be able to pass along some of this science and help our young people become more literate in science and understand science and see what's possible for them. And so everyone has their own way of getting there, but I think you're right in that it is important for anyone to know that, you can be doing one thing and still be contributing to the education of our world. And it doesn't have to, I don't think it even has to be one or the other. If you can find ways to do even informal education and share your experiences career, that's hugely valuable, because I think our students sometimes don't get to see a lot of what's out there. And I hear a lot from my students of, how am I supposed to decide what I want to do? I don't even know what there is to do. And I think that's really a common concern for our students, is I don't get to see enough of what's out there. And sometimes they don't experience that until, junior and senior year of college, when they really get to explore internships and do a lot of those hands-on experiences. So I really think that that's one of the ways that we can benefit our students, is to give them as many examples of careers, pathways after high school that that we can, so that they have a better understanding of what's available to them.
Another question just comes to mind now based upon the fact that you're working in science. How are you going to teach your craft virtually? You said it before, but as you're going through it, I'm like, wait a minute, there's a whole nuance to this.
Sure.
What do you say to your fellow your science-related teachers across the country who are going to watch?
Well, I say, strap the seatbelt and let's go for a fun ride. That's really what I'm thinking. If this was, prior to the explosion of YouTube and all the technology we have, I think it would be a lot harder to answer this question. I think I would say, I have no idea. I don't know what I'd do. I'd make a bunch of copies and hand it out. But we are very fortunate. And again, I do realize that there are schools that do not have this type of funding. There are families out there that may not have the type of access that everyone does. I totally understand that. But there is an availability of resources available to us virtually that is really beneficial to our students. But it's not just about, here's a video, answer some questions. I think that's a common, like, oh yeah, they could just watch a YouTube video and then you could give them a virtual worksheet. It really has to be more interactive with students in all subjects. But science, it's going to be difficult because you're missing a lot of those hands-on labs, those things that students look forward to, I think, in their science classes. So for me, as a life science teacher, I'm thinking about, what are we going to look at outside of our houses? What are we going to look at in our homes? What can we use that we can still learn? Because biology is the study of life. I mean, here I am sitting here. I'm one example of that. You're one example of that. And so I think if our students, maybe they'll even become a little bit more conscious of how they really fit into that equation. And so it's going to take some, experimenting of my own to see what's going to work. But I plan on doing a lot of interactive activities with the students that give them an opportunity to really give me feedback. I still want them to be able to work in groups, which is important for communication skills and things that they're going to need later in life. So how I'm going to do all of that, I am messing around with and experimenting with this week. That's what a lot of my colleagues and we keep Zooming and trying breakout groups and, doing different things to figure out how we're going to do that. And I took it upon myself to really try to attend as many webinars as possible, just to get some ideas. And I think once you have those ideas started in your head, more ideas and your creativity really starts to shine. So, I'm coming up with some examples, but what I would really say is, do what you're comfortable with and what you do well. And that's really what's going to be important for your students. If you're trying way too many of these amazing opportunities that are out there, but you're not comfortable with them, I think that's going to come across. And so do what you feel comfortable with, and your students will benefit from that, because that's where the most power is for you as an educator.
Well said, wisdom. And we're going to obviously have to come back and interview you later to see what actually happened after you implemented it. And we'll play the tape side by side. When you said this, did this happen?
I know. I'll have a totally different answer and probably some pretty funny stories of some major fails and hopefully some successes.
Well, consider it a early invitation to come back and talk to us about the work you're doing with students, particularly in science. Glad to have you in that field. And thank you again for taking time just to share with all of us, not only what you do, but lessons that we can take also as non-educators, what we can do to support you, because life sciences, for a lot of reasons, matter a lot. And thanks for also opening up just the fact that, even as educators, some things we don't know, but we're at least going to dive in and try to make this work for a lot of students who are equally concerned about what does schooling look like during these times.
I agree. I think everyone is on we're on equal footing for the first time. A lot of teachers, and one of the really interesting things, I think, is that younger teachers who have just gone through their teacher prep programs or recent graduates, this is their thing. Like they are skillful in technology. They have a lot of these interactive ways of teaching students. And so, I guess my final bit of advice would be, don't underestimate our new teachers, because they have great ideas, and a lot of them did their student teaching through the beginning of this pandemic. And so if there's anyone who has gotten the, what is happening? It is those individuals who thought they were going to, take over a class and then a second class and then, do their normal practicum. And then all of a sudden they're learning all of these online techniques as well. So I really think our collaboration and our use of each other as sounding boards and for practice is just going to be critical here for everyone.
Well, I'm sure the incoming teachers appreciate the shout out. So thanks for giving them one. Cara, thank you again so much for joining me on In Character, and look forward to the next conversation.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
Take care.